There is a personality profile test, whatever you want to call it, that really became in vogue about 10 years ago, called the Enneagram. Like many of these things, they are older than we realize they are. They hit a peak where everybody seems to be using them, though maybe you don't know what it is. That's fine. I'll give you a brief explanation here in a sec. And then they kind of, they've crested, and we're kind of in the back end of everybody. When I was in seminary, the Enneagram was a big deal. People would be talking about it in the hallway. I'm a this, I'm a that. In the same way that the Myers-Briggs has, a number of different, profiles. The Enneagram is based on the number 9. There are 9 numbers to the Enneagram, and those numbers each have some different personality characteristic. And this is all I'm going to say about it. I am an Enneagram type 1. And if you want to find out what that means, go Google it later. You'll find all the worst parts about me online. You'll find all the pitfalls. Go Google pitfalls of Enneagram type 1, and I invite you to go, yeah, I see a lot of Adam here. It's okay. I need you to see my pitfalls. The short version of what it means to be an Enneagram type 1 is that I am a perfectionist. The positive way of talking about the Enneagram type 1 is the idealistic reformer. Maybe you've caught that from me. The negative side of the Enneagram type 1 is that in my worst moments, I live by the motto, let my conscience be your guide. In my worst moments, that is how I live. I know what's right, and even if I don't do what's right, let my conscience be your guide. I know what is right, and gosh darn it, if you would just listen to me, the world would be a better place. When I was introduced to the Enneagram, I learned about it from a staff retreat that we did at the previous church that I worked at. We brought in 2 experts on the Enneagram who had written books about it and lectured all about it. And so they came and taught us about the Enneagram. And they said, you're not going to like some of what you discover about yourself, but we're going to try and help you figure out how to become better versions of yourself. And what they talked to me about as an Enneagram type 1 is they said, here are some spiritual practices that we think if you would add to your life, they will help you become a better version of yourself. And one of those spiritual practices that is absolutely critical for Enneagram type 1s like me is the habit of confession. And here's why. It's hard for me to say, let my conscience be your guide, when I realize that my conscience is also pretty busted sometimes. It's important for me to see the way in which I am not perfect. If I can be candid for a moment, the hard part is that for me as an Enneagram type 1, when I don't feel perfect, I feel like a really big failure. I feel like I am not worth anything when I see my imperfections. And so part of why confession is so important for me is that it forces me to be honest about who I am with God. But the grace of God is that I still feel the love of God in the midst of my imperfection. The statement that is important for me to hold on to is that people can be good even when they are not perfect. And that applies to me, and that applies to how I need to relate to other people. My congregation, my team leaders, my neighbors, my friends, my family. People can be good without being perfect. You see, this is how confession as a discipline has changed my life. It has allowed me to say, hey, I want to be good, and I want to be as good as I can be, but there are going to be days where I don't make it, where I fail. And I confess those moments to God, and we move on. And that softens my response to myself. It softens my response to others. And it helps me become a healthier person, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the ways. This week, our epiphany text, specifically from Luke, but also from Isaiah, the epiphany is almost as much about who we are as who Jesus is. About our need for confession in the face of Jesus. You see, when Peter sees Jesus' miracle, he's heard Jesus talk. I always love how presumptive Jesus is, right? Like, we're told in this text that Peter, and we know Andrew is his brother, they've gotten out of their boat. They're sitting by the shore cleaning their nets. They haven't caught anything, so there's no fish guts in them. It's just seaweed and other things. Well, let's clean the nets. Let's get them, coiled up the way they're supposed to be. And Jesus is like, nobody's in this boat. I'm going to step right in. And then he's like, hey, by the way, it's too close to the shore, Peter. Can you push me out a little ways? Peter's like, fine, whatever. So he pushes Jesus out and he listens to a sermon. We're not told what that sermon is, but we're told that Jesus teaches. And then Jesus is like, hey, let's go fishing again. And Peter's like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, I was up all night. I caught nothing. I wanted to be home an hour ago, but you took my boat and you've been teaching in it. But okay, Master, he says, if you want to, we will. And they catch more fish in one casting of the net than they know what to do with. And they have to call their friends to help them, and their boats are sinking. And I want you to notice that Peter, in that moment, recognizes who Jesus is. This is a moment of epiphany. You are a holy person of God. He doesn't yet recognize Jesus as the Messiah. That will come later. That will come after following him and after studying under him and after listening and seeing more. But he recognizes that there is something incredible about who Jesus is. He is holy. He is a man of God. And so he says, in verse 8, he says, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." The holiness of Jesus in this moment shows Peter how detestable he is. It shows Peter exactly all of his warts, all of his imperfections, all of the ways in which he is but a human and not a very good human at that. Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. This is a moment of confession. You see, in the face of God's holiness, the correct response is confession. The correct response is to see who we really are. We saw this in our Isaiah passage too, didn't we? Isaiah has this vision, this oracle where he is in the throne room of God. And we see these incredible angels who are so strong and so mighty that they have more wings than they need. 6 wings. They only need 2 of them, though, which is designed to be a sign of just how powerful they are. And yet these angels, the most powerful of angels, all they do is surround the throne. And this is what Isaiah says in chapter 6, verse 3. We heard this today. One called to another and said, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." The pivots on the thresholds shook. That's in the throne room. The threshold of the room shook. And the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, this is Isaiah speaking, "Woe is me! I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. But my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." See, Isaiah has a very similar reaction to what we see Peter have. That in the face of Jesus' glory, in the face of the glory of God, when the epiphanic moment happens, the first response should be, I don't deserve to be here. You are much better than me. One of my really good friends that I rollerblade with when the weather is nice, name is Stefan. Stefan will tell you that in his opinion, the best rollerblader of all time, because we have discussions like this, we're dorks. The best rollerblader of all time is a guy named Brian Aragon. And a couple years ago, Brian Aragon came out of retirement from rollerblading, and he was going to be at a professional event. And we said, Stefan, you should go to the event and meet your idol, your hero. And Stefan said, if I went to that show and saw Brian Aragon, I would shrink into the corner and stumble over my words. I would not know what to say. So much better is he at rollerblading than I am. Now, hear me say, Brian Aragon is a great rollerblader. If you want a wild trip back to the late 90s and early 2000s, I can tell you how to spell his name. You can Google it and be shocked that anybody was ever that stupid with wheels on their feet. But what Peter and Isaiah do is more than just not knowing what to say, right? It's actually more than just, I don't belong here. Because they recognize why they don't belong in this presence. They recognize that something is different between them and the person in front of them, and it's not just their skill, right? Peter doesn't say, well, Jesus, you're a better fisherman than I am. I guess I'll never fish again. Like, that's not what he says. He recognizes that there's something more there. And he says, get away from me because I am sinful. And we're not exactly sure why his response is to tell Jesus to leave. We're never really told. Peter says, well, I was afraid that I would make you dirty, or I was afraid that my sin would rub off on you. It may just be that truthfully, if you've ever been in the presence of someone who is more important or more righteous than you, many of us will feel inadequate in that moment. I do not deserve to be here. Get away from me. The first response to who Jesus is, to the moments of Jesus' glory, is confession. But praise be to God that we don't stop there. Because I hope you notice that both God, the Lord of hosts in Isaiah's vision, and Jesus to Peter do not leave him there. Right? The Lord in the passage in Isaiah, sorry, I have this flipped in my notes. I'll go to Luke first. It's okay. Oh wow, Stephen, you're awesome. Isaiah first. Sorry. I told them this out of order. But in Isaiah, the Lord kind of sends a seraph. He sends one of these angels, and the angel grabs a burning coal out of a fire, and he touches Isaiah's tongue, his lips, with this burning coal, and it's symbolic of him being forgiven, because the seraph says, now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. You have been forgiven. You confessed your sin. We've atoned for that sin. We've burned your lips off, I guess. They are clean now. And Jesus does a similar thing with Peter. He doesn't use the same words, but he gives the same idea. He says, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of me. Don't be anxious. Don't send me away. Actually, it's the best thing for you for me to be here, he says. Look, you've confessed your sin. Yes, you are a sinful person, Peter, but don't worry. I'm here and I love you. And not just do I love you, I have something for you to do. Wow. You see, the point is that having seen our sin and confessed it to Jesus and God, God takes away that sin, and now we are ready for the ministry appointed to us. It's after this scene in Isaiah 6 that God goes, who can I send? And Isaiah goes, well, I guess you can send me now because my sin's been blotted out. And he goes, good, I'll do that. And with Peter, your sin has been confessed, and I love you. Do not be afraid. I will teach you how to fish for people. You will be catching people. You see, before we can fish for people, before we can do the ministry that is appointed to us, we have to prepare our hearts. And the response to Christ's epiphany is confession. On our own, we will fish all night with nothing to show for it. You know, we don't have this in the Bible, but one of the things that I really appreciated about how the television show, do we call them that anymore? Whatever, the show, The Chosen. One of the things I really appreciated about how The Chosen handled Jesus' invitations to following him is that he used this fishers of men kinds of language with more than one disciple. We saw it with how he calls Matthew, who's a tax collector, right? You'll be counting people, I think is what he says. The idea being that some of us, look, I'm not a fisherman. I find it boring. I find it, well, maybe I need more boring in my life. I'm sorry. But sometimes fishing for people doesn't make much sense to me. The point is that Jesus has ministry appointed for each of us, and he might invite you into that in a number of different ways. But before we are ready for the ministry that has been appointed to us, we confess, and God forgives, and God prepares. We don't do this on our own, because left to our own, we will fish all night with nothing to show for it. There is he's a deceased priest by the name of Robert Capone, who once wrote, Jesus came to raise the dead, not repair the repairable, correct the correctable, or improve the improvable, just to raise the dead, and nobody but the dead. Nothing is all he needs from anybody. So take heart. Left to our own, we'll fish all night with nothing to show for it, but that's all Jesus needs. Nothing. That's all he needs from me. Nothing. I need him, not the other way around. I am sinful, he is not. I am needy, he will provide. And so the first thing that we have to do is we have to acknowledge, I'm dead. I'm dead. Only having received life in the face of our death are we ready to go catch people up in the good news of life. Right? There is a ministry here. Let me be very clear. This starts very dour, right? I'm sinful, I'm dead, but the point is, God forgives and God gives life, and he doesn't just give life. He doesn't just offer comfort. He doesn't just offer peace. He doesn't just promise to be there. He promises that we are given a mission. The benediction that we use here at Westwood at the end of every service asks God to send us out as faithful witnesses. Because we're reading from the book of Luke today. Luke also writes the book of Acts. And in Acts chapter 1, Jesus says, when the Spirit comes upon you, you will be my witnesses. The mission appointed to us is to be witnesses. Before we're ready for that, we have to say, Lord, forgive me. I'm sinful. And God graciously offers forgiveness. That is, again, Wayne said, God is not like us in his prayer today. There's one more way that God is not like us. He is always more quick to give than we are to ask for forgiveness. We are going to sing a song here in a moment that opens with the line, Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? This is what Peter does. Who am I that you are here? Who am I that the Messiah would welcome me? But what I hope you hear about both the Isaiah and our Luke passage today and the song that we're about to sing is that the incredible thing is that he does welcome you. He does forgive you. Just like Peter, just like Isaiah, we recognize our sin. We recognize our brokenness. And when we are in the presence of God, those are ever more clear. But he does not cast us away. He welcomes us in, promising peace and to teach us how to do the ministry that he has given us to do. Father, we thank you for Jesus, who promises peace, who commissions us as ministers, who gives us work to do. Father, I pray that you would send us out as faithful witnesses. But God, I pray that we would be aware of the things which hold us back from you, that we would confess with our hearts the way in which we need you, that we would be reminded of just how amazing your love is. Father, it is in the name of Jesus, your Son, that I pray. Amen.